Thank you all. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you all for staying today to hear me. I want to talk about the thing that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went out of his way not to discuss and ordered his cabinet ministers not to talk about, which is President Donald J. Trump's pending announcement that the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. So first thing I want to say is God bless President Trump. Thank you. You're making an announcement. It's true, 70 years late, but it's a long time in coming. And I think it's very important to point out why this announcement is good for the Palestinians, as well as why it's good for Israel and why is it good for the United States. Because I think that this is really a win-win-win proposition. To start with the Palestinians, in case many of you didn't notice, or any of you didn't notice, the PLO chief, Mahmoud Abbas, reacted to the news that President Trump is about to make this announcement by having a temper tantrum. He announced that he is declaring a 3-day temper tantrum, days of rage of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria and in Jerusalem, essentially saying, I am now leading a new terrorist campaign. I am going to start a new terrorist war. It's me. I'm doing it just like Arafat did before me. So why then, if this is the way that they responded, is this good for the Palestinians? It's good for the Palestinians because he's doing this because for 50 years, 60 years almost, the PLO has gotten away with this kind of behavior. He's doing this because he thinks that this is what gets him the big bucks. This is what gets him $550 million a year in American assistance, billions of dollars in assistance from the EU, and he gets the nations of the world bending over backwards to serve him and to appease his needs at Israel's expense. This has been going on, this racket, for decades and decades and decades. So he's doing what has always worked for him. And what we're seeing is that by not bowing to Abbas's extortion, Trump is saying, no, this isn't going to work anymore. It's not going to work for the PLO anymore. To keep your own people hostage to your extremism and refusal to accept reality, that Israel exists, that Jerusalem is its capital, and that if you really want to make peace with Israel, then you have to recognize reality. So if this goes on, then he's right. This will be the end of the peace process. Or he'll be replaced by Palestinian leaders who are actually willing to base their policies to advance their people on reality, that they have to live in peace with Israel. In other words, on the one hand, it's possible that the Palestinian people who have been living under PLO tyranny, that has been holding their children hostage and indoctrinating them to become killers, is about to end. Or it's possible that it's about to end, which means that they will be free of tyranny, or it's about to be ending and replaced by a truly moderate Palestinian leadership that's going to be willing to make peace with Israel for the betterment of the Palestinian and Israeli people alike. So either way, the Palestinians win out by this. They're not going to be led by the nose any longer by leaders who think that the way to move forward is by killing people. From Israel's perspective, this is a win because we're not going to be discriminated against by our closest ally anymore. Israel is not going to be the odd man out, the only country in the world that the United States doesn't locate its embassy inside of and doesn't recognize its capital city. This is an extremely, extremely important event for Israel, and it's a reason for us to celebrate. Now, a lot of Israelis say, well, we already know what our capital is. What do we need? What do we care if the Americans recognize it? We're so used to being treated poorly that we figure it's just taken for granted. Of course they're going to discriminate against us. But this is actually a great opportunity for Israel to welcome all of the nations of the world to recognizing our capital city and to recognizing the reality that Israel's not a conditional country. Because at the heart of it, and this brings us to what's good about this for the Americans, at the heart of this move, at the heart of this declaration that's upon us, it's going to happen at 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time, 8 o'clock in the evening Israel time, apparently. what's going to happen is that the most powerful nation in the world is going to begin to base their Middle East policy on reality for the first time, essentially, in 70 years. Washington is going to acknowledge that Jerusalem is the capital of the Jewish state, not Tel Aviv, not Haifa, not Ashdod, not Dimona, that our capital is Jerusalem. And by doing that, they're actually recognizing for the first time, truly in an unconditional way, that Israel is the Jewish state. Because any Jewish state, as the founders of the Zionist movement had to acknowledge, had to say, had to admit, and had to base the movement on, any movement for Jewish national self-determination that doesn't involve Zion, that doesn't place Zion at the center of our aspirations as a nation, is not real. And Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked gave a Chaim Weizmann story to Arthur Balfour that preceded the Balfour Declaration. Well, here's another one. At one point, Chaim Weizmann said to Balfour, he said, "Why do you travel for 2.5 hours to visit your mother when there are so many old ladies that you could visit here in London?" And Lord Balfour looked at him, "Because she's my mother." And he said, "Exactly. Exactly. Exactly. Jerusalem is our mother. It's inconvenient. She lives far away. She's our mother." And that's what this is about, is the United States of America recognizing that Jerusalem is our mother, that Israel is a Jewish state and will forever be a Jewish state. And that's why this is so essential. And this brings us to why this is fantastic for the United States of America. You know, I've been covering U.S. policy on Israel for a long time. I think I've been now writing for 17 years, which seems like an awful lot to me. But a lot of things have gone wrong for the United States in the Middle East in the past generation. And I posit, in fact, I wrote a book about it, but I think that it is very difficult to put together a coherent and successful Middle East policy when your Middle East policy is not based on reality. And when the United States of America pretends for a second that there can be peace without Israeli sovereignty over Jerusalem, they're not basing their policy on reality. So I don't know what the policy is going to be going forward for the United States of America. But I do know that it stands a far better chance of succeeding than all of the policies that have preceded it, because for the first time, the United States of America's Middle East policy will be based on reality. That is an amazing thing. So for anybody wanting to make America great again, the way to do it is by making America's foreign policy based upon the realities in the world as it is. So again, let me just end this conference in anticipation of a speech that's going to be given by President Donald Trump this evening, 70 years almost to the date after Israel was established, which will finally recognize our capital and say, "God bless you, President Trump, and God bless America." Thank you very much.